Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Happy New Year and Happy New Decade. This is Debra. I'm the CEO of Rue Global Impact, and this is Human Potential at Work. I'm really excited about my guest today. He has been a friend of mine, even though we've never met in person yet, but for years I've been following his work, and I'm very, very, very impressed with his work. And so I think you're going to be too. So my guest today is Martyn Sibley. He is joining us from Cambridge, England. I think Cambridge, England was named after Cambridge, Mass, right? Oh, no, maybe the other way around. Just kidding. Um, but he is the CEO and founder of Disability Horizon, and he also has a very impressive new podcast called Exceptional Leadership. So we're going to talk about that and talk about his very innovative work. So, Martyn, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Debra. It's great to be here, and interested to have some interesting conversations with you today.
Yeah, because I know you and I think the same way. So I think we're going to have some fun. But
Totally.
so, Martyn, tell the audience about you. First of all, tell us about you, and then tell us about your company. But we really want to dig into a little bit more about who Martyn is.
Sure. Well, so yeah, I'm over in England, as you mentioned. It's not far from Cambridge and not that far from London. I've been disabled since I was born. It's a genetic condition, so I use a wheelchair to get around everywhere. And I think there's quite an interesting part around identity that I've always been very much that my disability isn't all of me, very much in my personal life. But as we'll get on to in the professional sense, it is a big part because there's so many barriers that I have to face every day. And so do the 1.3 billion or whatever the latest figure is of other people. And so, yeah, I think that that's been an interesting journey on a psychological level about the identity of being disabled. So I have a lot of care support because I'm very limited in my upper body as well as my lower body as well. Tech has been an amazing, empowering tool. Sometimes a double-edged sword, as we know, in terms of the general stuff about social media and mental health. But I think with my disability, it's been phenomenally good. I studied economics and a master's in marketing at uni a few years back. I worked for 5 years at an NGO in London that was all about disability and inclusion and rights. So that was my kind of, cutting my teeth in the earlier days around that topic more professionally. And I left in 2011 to go freelance. I was blogging, I was speaking, consulting. Disability Horizon sort of grew out of my blogging, and I co-founded that with a friend of mine called Shrin Madipali. And then from that, we co-founded Accommable, which is the travel website. And that was the one we sold to Airbnb a couple of years ago. And now I'm very much in, like you, to inclusive branding and how we can use marketing to get change.
Yes, and I know that we're on the same page here, but marketing allows us to change the dialogues. It allows us to change the stories, and it cannot just be one person talking about this. We need billions talking about this because right now, when we're at a stage where artificial intelligence is coming in, we really need to continue to look at what it means to be really human. And, you were born with a disability. Does that make you less valuable than a person that wasn't born with a disability? Just what you were saying about some of the challenges that you've had, it makes you more resilient. So I would say it makes you more innovative and an even better partner with these conversations. And technology is a double-edged sword. We've got technology is changing our lives, and technology is changing our lives. It's scary, and there's some real concerns about artificial intelligence, and is it going to first of all take the jobs of everybody with disabilities? And there's just a lot of continued disruption and confusion in the marketplace. So when you told me what you were doing marketing, and I've always been impressed that you are that you were verified on Twitter, because I've never been able to get verified on Twitter. And so, and also you, I apologize, I know you're not going to want to brag about yourself, but you've won some really, really cool awards too. So do you mind just bragging a little bit, please, about, because you've gotten some really amazing recognition and you deserve it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I suppose the big one's the Power 100. So there's a list of influencers in the UK, and I've been in the list for the last 3 years. And the highest point I got to was third. And it's a little bit one of those where, you know, you're sort of pinching yourself, because there's people in that list that are in the traditional sense of influence, of television, politics, sort of more traditional business. And I think really for me, you know, where it started on my journey and where I'm now trying to help the next generation of influencers is social media just gave people and gives people a voice that never had one. And so I've just been doing my thing, blogging, sharing day-to-day life with a disability. And suddenly, you know, that I've got a following, and it's now known as influence. And so, yeah, it was a very humble moment to be in those awards and be with my heroes in those awards as well.
Yeah, I joined social media for the same reason. I thought this social media stuff's very cool. And so I went on there to try to turn up the volume for our community, for our community. And that's why people come to me all day. That's why we know each other. Come to me all the time saying, will you share this? Will you share this? Will you talk about the Debra? Did you see this? I had somebody from a friend of mine in the field say, Debra, did you see the Starbucks is hiring somebody in their accessibility department. Will you help turn that up? I'm happy to. So I went on to LinkedIn and everybody, and it started trending in LinkedIn in the accessibility tag, because I don't think we're still sharing enough. We're still, believe it or not sharing enough, and we don't have enough diverse voices in this conversation. And I know that's something both you and I are trying to solve, but do you mind talking a little bit about, you know, some of the steps you're taking to try to solve that, to make sure, because Martyn, I can try to speak for you, but instead of doing that, why don't I let you speak for yourself? It's the same with like Rosemary Musacchio, who is our Chief Accessibility Officer and doesn't speak in a traditional way. She still has got a lot of things to say, and she uses technology for her voice to be heard. But coming from her is more powerful than coming through me, and I'll tell you about her. So there's those almost the nuances of this conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think in terms of the kind of philosophy that I've always been by, you know, is that the vision is of an inclusive world. And I think that doesn't have to just be about disability. It's actually just about not having barriers to anybody participating in anything that they want to. And I think the liberating, empowering philosophy I came into contact at that NGO was the social model of disability. Now, it started a few decades ago and was much more around getting the independent living and the right side of things going. And I think the sort of culture and the landscape's changed a lot since then. And I think there are now newer philosophies to help leverage and improve things. But, you know, to see that I'm not the problem. I have a medical impairment that means I can't do some things, but that doesn't mean I'm the issue. The difficulties and the barriers under the social model, as you know, Debra, are all about there's the environment, attitudes and policies. And when we see through that prism that I'm only disabled by these barriers, right, we can get to work. We can then pull down these barriers, right? And I think, as I said, that the reason that we are in a newer landscape, there's lots of different reasons, but the new frontier is employment of disabled people. So that's from businesses. And it's the fact that we're consumers. So products and services should be inclusive, and that's businesses. So I think that's where we are, is really how do we help businesses understand the opportunity, because it is absolutely an opportunity when you are a business with the bottom line. But I also think, brands are just wanting and needing to be more social for lots of different reasons. So I think, through what I blog and through the feedback we get on Horizons from our community and through the podcast, as you say, it's about amplification of these are the issues that just shouldn't still be happening in 2020, right?
I agree.
And here are some solutions. So I'll give an example. I had a chat earlier, we did a podcast earlier on today with a guy that is able to create voice skills. And so particularly by using Google Assistant, you don't even have to just use the voice, you can also use the app for typing. And so we're looking at how and this is obviously a bit more the policy in the UK railways. I don't know if it's the same or similar or not in the US, but we have to book in advance for the ramps. And there's all sorts of barriers that causes that shouldn't exist. So by using new tech like voice and Alexa and Google and Apple, we're able to work with those businesses to have this harmonious solution. So it's lots of tech, it's lots of marketing, but the biggest thing you said earlier, it's human. It's about understanding the needs that all humans have and giving it to them.
And it's interesting that you bring up some of those technologies, because we are starting to see, and I was talking to somebody this morning, and I mentioned him on the program, I'm going to mention him again. I was talking to Darren Rowan, who is with Lilly Pharmaceutical, and I'm very fond of him. He's a very smart guy, and he is also legally blind. And we were talking about, the artificial intelligence and, the changes and the disruptions that we're starting to see. And I remember I was talking and I was telling him that there's some legislation that's starting to happen in the United States. We see one bill happening in California. We just found one in Wyoming, and there's two in Illinois. And what it is about protecting our privacy and security, which is important. Okay. And so dumbing it down a lot, it's like these technologies, do you want these technologies listening to you? Because if they're listening to you, they're stealing your privacy and your data, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, if these technologies don't listen to us, they can't learn to be better and to allow us to be more independent. So if you start taking away these artificial intelligence like the Alexas and the Siris and other voice technologies tied to smart homes, it is going to hurt us, because we already, our community and the community that is aging into disabilities, we're using these to remain independent more than the rest of the population. So and the legislator at one point came to us and said, we felt blindsided by Rue Global Impact telling us to slow down this bill, because we went to the community of people with disabilities, different groups, and they said, no, that's fine. And we said, yes, but they don't understand what's at risk with these technologies. And so we can say these big corporations are bad, but the reality is they're not all bad. They're trying to figure it out too. That's why, once again, they need our community to help them understand how we're using these technologies, what we wish these technologies would do for us. It's not just about privacy issues. And so Darren and I were talking about, we both have iPhones, and we recently did the Apple updates. And a question came, and it was so funny. It came to me and it said, will you allow Siri to continue to learn by listening and access to your videos and your audio and your docs? And my first instinct was, no, why do you need access to my stuff? No. And then I thought, oh, I'm sorry, Debra, I thought you wanted artificial intelligence to learn so that we could be more independent. So I said yes. And Darren said he said yes. And then he was listening to a podcast where people were complaining about privacy, and it spooked him, and then he went and turned it off. And then he was talking to me, and he's like, but we should let him learn, right, Debra? And I said, I think we have to let him learn, Martyn, so that we can continue to show that, yeah, we're human beings and we use different parts of our bodies and our brains and our eyes and our ears, but we use them differently. It doesn't mean we don't matter. So these are big issues, Martyn. These are
Yeah.
big,
And I think that
complicated issues.
the opposite of the point about the privacy is that it's not since we've had listening devices that made privacy any different. Like the privacy went out the window way back. Like as soon as we're on social media, they know where we are, what we're doing. If you've got credit cards, you know. So there's a bit of a myth that it's the new listening devices. And, you know, of course, we have to watch the whole Cambridge Analytica type stuff to bring the word Cambridge back into the conversation now. But, you know, it's vital that there is a level of privacy for all citizens and all humans. But I just feel that we're all the train's out the station. The tech's going so fast now, but we have to harness it for good. And there's another podcast we did recently with Open Inclusion around driverless cars, and it's another example of this crossroads that, you know, generally transport has been so difficult for many people with a disability forever for different reasons. And the main reason is we weren't consulted, or maybe, to be fair, with the Victorian Underground in London, you know, there was probably a lot less people like myself that had the health and the power chairs to get out and about. So again, I'm not in the blame game, but as we create new transport, we're all here and ready to give feedback. But if they don't consult and do inclusive, universal design, we're going to be more left out than we ever have been. But if they think about everybody, this is a watershed moment, Debra, where we could be more included than ever.
Yes. And I agree. And I will I'm very proud to also partner with Open Inclusion. I love Christine. She's amazing. And I love the work that they're doing. I love the work they're doing with open banking and making sure, you know, your banks have done a good job. I have to do a shout out for Paul Smythe with Barclays. I mean, I'm always whining to him, please, will you bring those services that you're doing over to the States, please? But anyway, it's coming soon, but I'm envious of some of the stuff that they've done to make their banks more accessible in the UK. But you're right. And I think also sometimes corporations wanting to do the right thing, Martyn, they will, go out and find a person with a disability and say, okay, but the problem is it's just like the legislators. The legislators said, but we asked the community. I said, yeah, but that who you asked didn't understand the technology. So they didn't understand the risks to our community. And so it's buyer beware for these technologists and these corporations. You've got to go to people like Martyn that know the technologies, understand it, understand what needs to be done. And you've been doing this for years. You've been talking about it through your blogs and your podcasts and and so you have to understand who you are dealing with. And I think that's one reason why the work we're both doing is so important, because we're not going to say we know everything. We don't. But there is a lot of nuances and disruption and all these different things happening in touch points. And it's very important that, as we both agree, that the community be consulted. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you're consulting the people in the community that actually understand the nuances and how big these problems are. And I don't know if you want to tackle that.
Yeah, there's so many things jumping off of that, right? Because I think that you definitely need that feedback mechanism as part of the research, and any kind of customer market research, it has to have that place. But you definitely need the experts there as well. I mean, my background and my passion is more in the realm of the marketing communication. So for the last few years, I've been so excited to go with brands and be like, let's sing about the great stuff you've done and let's get it out to the community. And, you're going to have a new market of customers, and particularly like Gen Z and Gen Y are going to love you because it's like the new green marketing. And every time it's like, yeah, we did, this and we did that. But what if one person can't use the product? Or what if there's one like someone can't quite use the website for whatever reason? And it's so frustrating because if you weren't talking about disability, you would say you're not going to please everyone.
Right.
You're probably going to get trolled, right? Because that's just social media 101 for brands now. But I think there's such a fear of getting it wrong that it's to use a weird metaphor, it's paralyzing, right? And so we've had to kind of come in more and more into, right, so what are you worried about? And what are the tangible things that maybe, yeah, you could still improve. But in the end, it's just about getting them on a journey, these businesses on a journey, often through the carrot that is inclusive brands are going to win, which I loved your book over my Christmas break. It was fantastic. It really helped me get a lot of my thinking in place as well. But yeah, and so I think that's where we are. It's almost coaching and mentoring and supporting the businesses that it's fine if you get it a bit wrong. It's fine if there's a bit of a problem. We all make mistakes. We're not perfect.
Right.
But if we at least try, we might get a lot more down the road than we have been. And for me, that's a big part of the psychology of this.
I agree. And, that's why, first of all, Rue Global Impact is very, very proud to be working with your company, and I know we're going to collaborate a lot more in 2020 and beyond. So very stoked about that. But it's also, programs like the Valuable 500 that the amazing Dr. Caroline Casey is running. Yeah. And I thought that this would be an easy yes for these corporations wanting to make a difference. It's free to join. You have to be a corporation. It's got to be signed by the CEO. But it's been harder to get corporations to really agree to do it. And I've talked to multiple corporations about this, and they said that sometimes we're so confused because we're hit by so many different players in the market, and we're not really sure. We know we're not doing enough, and they're always apologizing to me. Oh, we haven't done enough. It's like, well, let's celebrate what you have done. Exactly. You and I are the same there.
Yeah.
There's so much fear of a misstep and maybe their brand being dragged in social media, and boy, that can get ugly, and we've seen that.
Yeah.
So how do we help them overcome some of the fears they have about including our community?
Yeah, I mean, because I think you're right that there's that sort of fear of getting dragged into some kind of negative PR storm, and I'm never the kind of person that wants to use the stick or fear. I'm much more about possibility and optimism, but there is a truth that if people don't act, they're going to miss out, because someone eventually is going to step forward, and in different industries and different product areas, eventually people are going to grab the bull by the horns and make this their thing, and they're going to be the winners. So I think we're talking about FOMO here, right? And I also think that by doing nothing is also going to have more and more risks, that there'll be more potential negative PR from not acting than from acting and not getting it quite right. But in the end, it's all about that trust. And I think empathy and compassion, it really is about, we all have to understand, we all want to get to some destination, and they won't always be the same destination or the same way to get there. But broadly, most people are on a similar page in the big picture. It's just sort of how we can all work together and support each other is the way.
I agree. And something that we've been predicting, us strategists, you and I and so many others, was that, the aging of societies was going to catch up. And that has now happened. Just speaking from a U.S. lens, the baby boomers the baby boomers across the world are all over the age of 56 now. And many are acquiring very serious disabilities, and we're seeing it in record numbers, and it's happening to executives now. It's happening to high net worth individuals. And so a lot of these corporations are saying, and you don't want to say, I told you so, but because that's always probably obnoxious. I do to my husband, he doesn't appreciate it. So, but, and of course that doesn't help anybody. But so a lot of the corporations are getting really freaked out about what's happening as people age into disabilities. And we don't have the same supports often in our countries for people that age into a disability, as we do for someone like my daughter that was born with a disability. And I got supports. Could I have gotten better, blah blah blah, whatever, but I did get help. I did get help. And even right now, my daughter is now on her own in her own apartment, but it's a supported apartment situation. And she has a roommate also with disabilities who's lovely. And she has staff that comes and supports her, both of these women, because, they need that support so they can be independent, and they love it. Love it. So, but when you age into a disability, like my father-in-law, when he became deaf in his late 80s, he just more and more became isolated and lonely, and I was freaking out because I'm in the field and I was trying to help him, and we were trying to use technology and blah blah blah. So, but it's really frightening for the people that are aging into disabilities, and they don't identify with the community, Martyn. And so I don't know if you're seeing a lot of those same issues too, but it's very troubling.
Yeah, I think on the HR, the human resource level, if any member of staff becomes disability, whether it's purely on the kind of aging side that you were explaining, or it could be a younger person but through ill health or an accident, that there's clearly a big agenda about, well, that's a real issue about productivity and retention of our workforce. So I think that's definitely lent itself to the HR agenda. I think when we look at the consumer side, so we've now got the purple pound and we've got the silver pound, or I say pound because obviously I'm in England, but the purple dollar. I think, that should have shifted the needle further and quicker than it has. And I think it's because whilst there's this massive potential marketplace, it definitely comes back a bit to the sort of fear side that we were talking about. But the reason for me that marketing is powerful is you say, well, we're going to segment this, it's like, let's just get into the numbers. And it might be, you don't need to take, your product to every single type of impairment today. Why don't we start with just wheelchair users, or with, someone with a hearing impairment? It's still better to start moving forward than to say it's all or nothing, really. But I agree, absolutely, the baby boom aging side has created more of a pressure on businesses to act, basically. And I think we're both proponents that tech offers so many solutions too. So, it's there for the taking. And I think your point at the beginning about how marketing can almost use as a narrative and the culture, that's where we are. We're trying to say disability isn't about pity or sympathy or charity. It's so much more about empowerment, independence, but contribution, opportunity, more positive words. And it takes time to change culture, but particularly with social media and marketing, there are people, not just myself, that are out there with a disability. They've got a lot of followers on Instagram and YouTube. They are changing the world. It's just we're waiting for the businesses to wake up to these opportunities, really.
And I was speaking to some investors that were interested in our industry before we got on air, and they were asking me really, really good questions, but trying to understand why the market, why there's such a gap between the market and the services and the solutions, and the corporations truly including people with disabilities, really meaningfully, truly including us. And I was giving them a lot of, because there's a lot of different reasons why, and the nuances and the changing and the disruption and all the stuff. And I was saying to them, you can get out on social media and you can see who's having the conversations that are game changers. You really can. It's not that hard to figure it out. They're using the hashtags. We have programs like Access Chat, AXS Chat, which is 5 years old, that we've been doing. There's podcasts like yours. There's podcasts like this and mine. And so there are conversations that are happening, but often it feels like, and this is definitely a problem in the United States, the corporations are sort of afraid to swim in, because they just don't know what they don't know. And then there's some misinformation that, oh, well, if I do this one thing here and an index or something over here, yay, I got 100%, I'm done. Woohoo. Okay, no. And so there's also, unfortunately, our community is, causing some of the miscommunication and the misinformation and the
Yeah.
confusion on accident, not meaning to do it, but
well, it's impossible to have a unified voice. It's a bit like with the politics, right? I mean, there are, wherever you are in the world, if the disabled people of that country were both kind of courted, if you like, from a political party that we want these policies to enable you to live the best life, etc., or the disabled community started to say, well, look, we're only going to vote for whoever gives us what we need. It could skew an election. It could win an election. And it's a bit like that. It's a potential consumer base that if every disabled person boycotted a brand,
right,
they would see a massive impact. But as you just alluded to, whilst, and I said at the beginning, didn't I identify as disabled, but I also have my own political view and my own favorite soccer team and, my favorite supermarket, and they're not the same as every other disabled person. So I think it's great to know that from a business point, there's a big marketplace, but it doesn't mean that one business has to go for the whole market. It could be a few variables, and there's still a really great opportunity to do good and to help the bottom line as well.
I agree. And you talked about that before, and I wanted to say, I remember one time I was speaking in Chicago and somebody said, well, where do we begin? And somebody on the stage said, just hire a person with a disability. And then Mike came to me next to make a comment, and I said, you're a corporation. How do you start anything? I've worked for corporations for, many, many years. And you start with a plan. What's the plan? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And then you work the plan. You start with the plan. You don't just jump into something not knowing what you're doing or where you're going or where the rat holes are. You start with the plan, and then you work the plan. And it's like you're saying, you don't have to start out trying to, boil the ocean. What are we going to start with here? What makes the most sense? And let's do it. And you and I both agree. Talk about what you're doing, engage the community so we can help you, and we'll brag about the corporations that are trying to include us. Let us brag about you. What I say about a corporation, I think, is more empowering than what they say about themselves. Same with you, Martyn. When you say, Barclays Bank is a great bank, or, people are going to listen to that, certainly people in the community. So I know that you're trying to do even more on social media, and I want you to talk about that. And I know we're coming at the end of it, but I want you to talk about that, and I also want you to tell people how they can find you on social media, your website. How can they find out more about what you're doing?
Sure, thank you. So I mean, I'll still be blogging on martynsibley.com, and that, I mean, if I look back at my more than 10 years of blogging, I can see my growth and my journey as well, both as a person with the travels, but professionally and philosophically as well. So that carries on. I'm doing a lot of speaking. I'm off to Switzerland to speak for a big pharmaceutical in next month. And that's very much about, hey guys, you have patients, but talk to the patients about what we need. It's the same as the consumer argument, right?
Right.
And I'm doing a lot of coaching online. So then disabilityhorizons.com, that's where anybody from the community can contribute stories and opinions. And, we're up to well over 500,000 readers a year, ever growing, ever expanding. So that's a lovely place for people to get inspiration and tips from the community as well. And then on the business side, we've sort of morphed into this kind of agency where our big vision of services is running full-scale influencer marketing. So we want to be able to get disabled influencers involved and spreading the message of brands, but getting paid for it as well. And this is a young industry, but we're seeing that influencer marketing beats paid ads now, hands down, because the engagement and the conversion is so high. And so on that level, I think probably at the moment it's to come via me, or we've got a work with us page on Disability Horizons. But yeah, I mean, every week we're meeting and talking to new people and collaborating, like with yourself. And I think 2020, you know, it sounds a bit cliche, but it is going to be massive. I can feel it in the waters.
I agree. I agree. You can feel it happening right out of the gate, and it's really exciting. And I think the way to do it is what we're doing, collaborating with each other, because I have a small team. I have 10 people, and there's no way that we can meet the needs of all the clients that need our support. So we, you know, we partner with your company, and we partner with, you know, open with Christine's group, and we are getting behind the Valuable 500, and we love what Kate Nash is doing. BDF, there's so many great players out there. And I think this is the way forward. And I just want to make one more comment about something you said, and we need to get paid. It is ridiculous that still, and I do so much work for free, and I've invested so much of my own money in this community, but this is my community. I believe in it, and I believe that human beings are worth fighting for. So we all need to be paid for the work that we're doing, because if we were privacy experts or cybersecurity experts or whatever, nobody would think to ask us to come and speak for free at a conference. That would be ridiculous, you know, or to come and consult with them for free. It's so I just wanted to, I know you feel the same way. You know, there are a lot of people doing really important work that are starving to death. So I believe this is a year when a lot of this stuff is going to change too. So, and I believe in your work, and I'm very, very grateful that you're on the show, and I look forward to you and I continuing to work and collaborate in the future too. So let me turn it over to you two for the last words though.
Yeah, I mean, we've covered a lot. And again, thank you for the opportunity to share it. I'm really excited. I know you're working a lot around the sort of technologies and AI and how that's going to, you know, be a big impact. So I think, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where that takes us all as well. But yeah, I mean, if anyone listening is inspired both from the community or from businesses, get in touch with us. And you and I, Debra, are very happy to help them on that journey.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Here's to 2020. So thank you for everybody listening to the program. We're always interested in getting corporate sponsorships of the show. So if you're interested in sponsoring the program, we want to hear from you. And thank you, Martyn. Thank you for everything you're doing and for your ongoing leadership, your global leadership. I really am impressed with everything you're doing. And I love your blog and your podcast.
Thank you. We'll have that meet up in one of the Cambridges soon.
Yes, I agree. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Martyn.